So we're going to just begin by closing our eyes and coming into this moment. And as you close your eyes, you might even want to really bring your attention to your eyeballs and see if you can't allow them to relax a little bit. Allow them to sink back into that skull that is holding them. And perhaps you want to bring some attention to your feet and allow those bottoms of your feet to touch the earth, or that thing that is closest to the earth. And it may just be naturally impulsive now, just to want to find your breath. And as you breathe gently, just noticing, how are you breathing? Where are you breathing? And as you're ready, taking in some nice deep breaths into the bottom of your belly. And I invite these breaths to be nice and deep and slow and expansive. At your own pace. And right about now, as you're breathing deeply with your feet touching the floor, you might just want to notice, what position are you in? This could be literal or metaphorical. How are you positioned right now? Because how you're seated could very well be a very strong indication of how you're meeting the world right now. So are you leaning forward? Pushing in? Are you leaning back? Are you slunched over on yourself? And there's no judgment in this, right? There's no story making yet. Right now, we're still fully engaged in that observer self. So I invite you just to notice, what position is your body naturally coming into? And as you bring your attention to it, I invite you to find, what does alignment feel like in your body? So for some of us, it might feel like we're strengthening and engaging those core muscles, allowing our spine to straighten, making more space for breath in our belly, rolling back our shoulders to make some more space into our chest. When that happens, sometimes can't help but our palms roll out. But what does alignment feel in your body? Noticing some of you are naturally stretching, and that looks good. So if your body says, oh, I want to stretch right now, then may it be so. Maybe some shoulder rubs. So for those of you who have been with me before, you're kind of on to me. But for those of you who are new, oh yay, it's good to see your faces. Oh my God. Then this is that moment of, how do we prepare? A lot of you are here for storytelling, but how do you prepare people to receive your story? This is one of the things that we do. This is one of the things that we begin with, helping people come present. And I am really, really excited to share a new gift in my world, which is Sasha Benedetti. I just discovered her. She was literally prayer. I was walking through the hills of Topanga. I got inspired to run this new class that was, I've been teaching storytelling for a long time. I've never, ever collaborated with literally what's going on in the stars, and to really listen for, you listen for the times. That's one thing, right? You listen for the times that we're in, and what do we need, but then there's this other thing, which is getting out of this, the egoic brain that says, well, I think this is what's needed, so I'll do it, and then there's this other kind of, I find almost like a humbler, way far mysterious kind of presencing of saying, well, wait, how is the universe, how is the cosmos, how is the world literally aligning to support us? And what portals, what things are more available and more accessible to us than any other particular moment? And so I got really inspired by teaching right alongside Venus retrograde, since it's a really powerful retrograde. I'm not going to even begin to talk about it, because as I began to really feel into what would it be to explore our love medicine when the universe is conspiring to support us to really get deep into understanding our relationship to love itself, I was like praying. I was like, who's the right astrologer? Because I can't pretend to know what I don't know. Neither do I want to. And so I started noodling around. And then I was, by the grace of Venus herself, I was introduced to Sasha, who specializes in Venus cycles. I didn't even know that there were astrologers that specialized in Venus cycles. So it was like, it was a gift in my world, and I'm excited to share this gift with you guys. If I'm turning to the side, you're going to have to excuse me. My cats have decided, they're like, I don't know what's happening over here. They've gone completely crazy and have broken into the treats. So it's just a funny little scene that I wish you guys could see over here. But anyway, so what's going to happen today is Sasha is going to bring us really present to understanding Venus, understanding the Venus cycle, and beginning to understand what does it mean to align and work with that in collaboration with our love stories. And then I'm going to do a little short introduction to like, what is sacred storytelling? What does it mean to work with our love stories, and how would we do that? And that's what we're going to do for the next hour. If you have questions, and know that we both love to we want to hear from you. So if you have questions, I'll keep an eye out on you guys. So you can always just throw up your hand and I'll see you. Or if you want to put your question in the chat box, we'll also keep an eye out on that. There's no way that Sasha can go into the full depth of everything right now. So she's going to just be doing this overview, but by all means, I got to do a session with her yesterday. It was really fun and fabulous, and such a treat. And she's got such a depth of knowledge. So, may the nonlinear conversation begin. And I'm going to hand this over to Sasha now, and away we go.
Thank you, Leah. Wow, I'm so honored to be here and part of this holding of story at this powerful time. And I just loved the invitation to come into our bodies, because that is so much about this experience of how do we bring the wisdom of the cosmos into our soma, into our bodies, and how do we relate to this universal energy in order to know more of ourselves. So there's an incredible intimacy that I'm so delighted to keep opening within myself as I listen, as I open, as I remember to come back to my body and come back to my heart. So I call my work that I do is Venus wisdom, because I feel that when we put the heart at center, then it really simplifies a lot. And when we return to the heart again and again, when we're looking at life, or we're looking at what, all of this data coming in, or all of these possibilities, it really integrates us, and it really brings us into what's most important. And so Venus wisdom, Venus is the feminine nature, the heart, the body, the senses, everything yummy about life, basically, how we connect, how we give and receive affection. And so when we have our eye on that ball, so to speak, of all the balls we can have it on, we basically are leaning into the deepest possibility for fulfillment in this lifetime. And so what I love is to keep it really accessible. You don't need to know anything about astrology per se to begin to make more of an intimate relationship with Venus. And of course, you don't need to know anything about astrology to make more intimate relationship with your own heart. So I'm really excited about, what you're bringing forth as far as this love medicine, because this is such a powerful time to be in this transition between one cycle ending and another cycle beginning. So I want to talk a little bit about what's going on in the cycle. I want to talk a little bit about the story that's such a good metaphor for the process of what Venus can guide us into. And just say that, yes, it's, there's a lot of complexity, but we can just keep it really simple in that Venus has this 19-month cycle. And it begins when she comes into an exact alignment with the sun. So she's the closest to the earth. So she's basically in between earth and sun. And it's this moment where we cannot see her, but there's something seeded. There's a conception that then plays out for 19 months. And she's about 9 months in the morning sky, and she's about 9 months in the evening sky. And then she has these transitional points where we cannot see her because she's too close to the sun from the Earth's view. And so this really aligns us with these feminine mysteries of life, death, and rebirth, which is so much about life, and it's so much about relating. When we're in a relationship, when we're deepening with someone over time, we open to change through allowing ourselves to be new again, allowing ourselves to learn what needs to die in me in order to claim more of this present moment. You know, what needs to get shed, what needs to get, you know, processed or looked at in order to move forward in a new way. And that there's this endless delight of learning from each other in a, you know, in a healthy relationship that's built on love and trust. And so, you know, there's this movement that we get to be a part of when we're tracking the Venus cycle, that I think there's a certain aliveness that we're aligning with. And, you know, in order to align with something, you need to have awareness. So that's really the first step, you know, and this awareness comes from even just that basic 4-part understanding of like, that's what Venus is doing. And right now, where we are in that 4-part play is at the very end of one 19-month cycle and about to start a new 19-month cycle. So this Venus journey is akin to a heroine's journey. You know, it's akin to this process we go through in our life of transformation, of listening to our heart desire, showing up and saying yes, making some kind of bold movement towards what we love and what we want, and then being on a process with life where we meet the places where, you know, it doesn't turn out the way we thought, or what we thought wasn't actually true. We come into a relationship with authenticity through meeting obstacles, and you know, this is so much about relationship too. We show up at that beginning, we're like, I love you, you're the most perfect person in the whole universe. And then we meet like, oh, but you do that. Oh, okay. So there's that, like that humbling. And I love that, you know, I love that you actually use that word humble, because, you know, when we show up with this kind of a willingness to be changed through life and through relating with, okay, this doesn't feel good, but there's something here for me, you know, to receive it. That word humble has very much to do with the part of the Venus cycle that's about her descent into the underworld. And there's a 4,000-year-old story that was written on those clay tablets, you know, Inanna's descent, that came out of, you know, the Sumer culture, where Inanna was the queen of heaven. She was all that. So there's a lot in that story, and I won't try to unpack it all in the time that we have. But, you know, essentially, the way that I see that story is that it is a tale of disconnects in order to teach us how to connect. And so I'll talk a little bit about that, you know, story in a moment. But, you know, this humbling that happens when we show up bold and bushy-tailed and bright, you know, for life, is, you know, connected to the word humus, which is earth. You know, it's a willingness to be humbled by what's happening and not to be dispirited. So right now we have this incredible chance to integrate everything that's happened in our heart since late October of 2018. That's when this Venus cycle started, and it seeded in the sign of Scorpio, which is very intense. That's the underworld, baby, you know, the scorpionic depths. That's where you're definitely going to be, something's going to be dying so that something else can be reborn. And so we got this very intense lesson around what are our deepest wounds. And because she, in that last cycle, which is unusual, she met the sun in Scorpio, so that began her 19-month cycle, but she was first visible in Libra. which is unusual. So she was straddling these two energetics, these two expressions of feminine consciousness. And so we're looking at both of those when we look at the theme. So we're looking at how do we go in and see and heal and know our deepest wounds, especially around violation and betrayal, all of those scorpionic themes. And then the Libra part of that, to come into balance, to do this work within us, to balance our masculine and our feminine within, so that we may find more wholeness and show up in our relationship differently. Because when we have that sacred marriage within us, when our masculine and our feminine are getting it on inside, we're coming from a totally different place when we show up to relate to someone else. We've got this inner circuit that's really working together to heal the disconnects and the fragmentations. And of course, that's an ongoing process. So every Venus cycle, there's a new chance in that 19 months to reclaim more of our heart wisdom, to claim more of who we are, to love more of ourselves home on this heroine's journey of starting out bright and bushy-tailed, young. Like it takes a lot of courage to be brand new again and to go for it, when, especially as we get older. And this is something that we see in astrology. There's all of these moments that are initiations, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s. It's like, okay, are we going to claim more of our vitality, or we're going to be like, oh, I'm old now, yeah, I can't do that anymore? Like, where are we at with our relationship to opening and becoming and trying and being new? It's a heroic act to do that, no matter what age we are. So here we are, we're coming in this home stretch. Was visible in the evening sky yesterday. I don't know about today. She's close enough to the sun that she may not be. Usually when she gets about 10 degrees to the sun, she's no longer. So the Venus retrograde cycle always starts when she's in the evening sky, because she's at that point where she's coming into her position closest to Earth. And then she's so close to the sun that we can't see her from Earth. So in the middle, the Venus retrograde actually has three parts. It's the Venus retrograde in the evening sky. It's the Venus retrograde can't see her too close to the sun. I call that reset phase. And then it's Venus retrograde in the morning star phase. She's still visible, but she's retrograde. And I can't hear you, Leah, but it looks like, do you have a question?
I do.
Yeah.
As you say that, and as a storyteller, it makes me realize, it's like, it feels like it's this moment where she's so close to the sun, right? Like the light is so bright. And in some ways, when I listen to some astrologers talk about it, it almost feels like it could bring up abandonment issues. Like, oh, she's left us, she's gone.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, oh, right. So what part of you, when it's not right there, like how
Yes.
does how do your attachment issues show up? Because the other thing, and just hearing it and not, I'm about as novice astrologer as anyone can come, but in listening to you, it makes me wonder about when that planet, and Venus in particular, interesting to work with, because she's, one of the closest planets to the Earth. Her retrograde, she comes closest than any other planet. So just like a family member, she's really close. So we're really affected by what she does. We're influenced a little bit stronger than other planets, as I understand it. And so it's like, when she comes that close to the light, does that make it easier for us to see things that we might not have been able to see? Does it shed light on the blind spots?
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. I love that. You're freezing. Hopefully I'm not. Can everybody else hear me? Okay.
But I think retrograde, that's revelatory. Oops, am I frozen?
Oh, you were for a second.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. I'm glad you asked that, because I'm a little bit, I hold this a little bit differently than some other astrologers. And what I'm referencing is my own experience of syncing with the Venus cycle for 8 years and really feeling into it. Like, oh, she's here. Oh, she's here. So just that, to say that, we can have this map and this concept, and there's slightly different ways to hold all of this. Of course, always there's multiple perspectives, but the way that I felt into it is that really right now, I actually had a profound, I won't tell the story now, but I had a profound experience when I actually saw her cross the face of the sun 8 years ago, because for once, that was the only time in our lifetime, we could actually see her at this point where she's closest to the Earth. and she eclipsed the sun, right? So to me, it didn't have that quality of kind of like, oh, where'd she go? Even though she was out of the sky, it was more like this meeting of eros and heart. It was more like this infusion of, you know, she's backlit by the sun at that moment. And so it's like this divine union between light and body. And, you know, I had a dream that night that was like one of the most powerful dreams I've ever had, where I was making love to someone, and it was the most white hot sex I'd ever had, along with the most broken, open hearted sweetness together. And I was like, oh, that's Venus meets Sun. You know, it's like this super delicious, potent union. And this opportunity, something gets seeded there that we learn from for 19 months. And, you know, I honor what everybody feels in this. You might see this and go, oh, you know, kind of, there is a little disappointment, like I can't see her. That's definitely there. But I feel that more when she's on the other side of the sun. She's furthest away from the earth. Like, whoa, where'd you go? Like, I can't, it's much harder to feel her there and to feel her medicine. And that's when she's in the underworld. So a difference that I have is I consider that part on the other side of the sun, the underworld phase, and this is reset, and it's more like a backstage costume change. She's like, right now we're Venus retrograde in Gemini. It makes it really good energy for reassessing, reflecting, restoring our connection to our heart. What did I learn in these last 19 months? What got touched on? Writing is brilliant right now, speaking it, you know, processing it, you know, with our minds, and really wrapping it up between now and when she meets the sun on June 3rd. And then even to take some really quiet time and just, you know, be in this open inquiry of what was the most important heart lessons from this last 19 months. And, you know, then when she meets the sun, it's more like private in a way, you know, and retreat and like deep time to like receive that light code and receive that new assignment and deep listening, deep body listening. And then she reemerges in the morning sky and she's brand new. And it's still this like, okay, I'm getting ready. You know, she's putting on her Gemini costume. She's taking off those Scorpio furs and, you know, leopard skin and whatever, you know, her garb was, bone earrings, you know. And she's like, oh, I'm putting on my butterfly wings. I'm getting ready for this new cycle. And then she gets to be visible probably around June 9th. We'll get to see her in the morning sky. And so to just be in that energy of the new, be in that energy of showing up innocent again with the wisdom that we gained from the last cycle. And that wisdom can keep getting built upon, or we can shut down and get cynical about love and it didn't work out. And there's a lot of relationships that fell apart in this last cycle. I've sat with a lot of people who saw that dissolution because it wasn't the container that could really take them forward. And at this time on the planet, there's really a big call to be in an evolutionary process within ourselves. And I feel like syncing with this Venus cycle really lines us up with that. And if we're relating to someone where there's not that agreement around growth and change and really moving into our full potentiality, you know, it may have fallen apart. And even if it didn't fall apart, a lot of relationships went through it and they're like, whew, we survived, you know, the Venus and Scorpio cycle.
Could I ask you just, because I love that you speak so about how to work specifically with Venus and with the Venus energies and practices, and can you give us, you know, can you lead us into the path of how we might begin to explore that as we
Yes.
enter into our really working our love stories?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's so much about the senses, you know, and you know what you were saying about the feedback response. You know, it's really, I've created a feedback response in my relationship to Venus. Like, look, when we love someone, we look in their eyes, we look at their face. So I go out and I look at Venus and I really, you know, like the beautiful exercise that you did, I get in my body first. I prepare myself to receive her story in my heart. And I get open and I really make sure I have soft jaw and soft pelvic floor and like I'm available. And then I watch her, and it's so beautiful to begin to see, oh, wow, she's really far south right now. Like, I couldn't believe it this week. She dropped so fast in the sky, but I wouldn't have known that if I wasn't out there watching her every night. So it becomes a practice. And then now with the morning sky, you got to get up early. You got to get up before dawn if you want some of that action, because by the time the sun's up, the light washes her out. So yeah, like making it a devotional practice has really changed my life to not just have it on paper, be like, okay, I have all the dates, I know this is happening, but to go out there and allow Venus to reflect what's happening in my own heart. I've received so many insights by just being in that open space, out on the land, but on the earth, watching, open in this open inquiry and seeing what arises, you know. So that is, I think, one of the most powerful ways to sync with the cycle. And then basically just knowing where she's at, you know, just even those 4 places, you got to know that to know where to look. Morning sky, evening sky, where is she? And then to reflect, you know, to write about that, to keep a journal. And encouraging all of the people that I work with to keep a Venus cycle journal for this next cycle, because it's amazing. You know, when I give people the dates of when she Rose's morning star or whatever in her cycle, they're like, whoa, this so aligned with my life and my relationships and what happened. So in this heroine's journey, we right now get to write our ending, and we get to claim victorious no matter what happened. We get to claim victory in everything we learned in the last 19 months. And so I think like actually writing that story is quite a powerful thing to do at this time.
And I'm going to talk a little bit about that in just a moment. And I just wanted to get one more delicious detail, because we know when I talked, of course, I talked to the astrologer about when I should really launch the class. And she was like, oh, you got to launch it on the 2nd so people can get prepared to do the 3rd. But then, you know, there's logistics, wanting enough time for people to prepare. So there's something that so could you talk to us about the 3rd and what people could be doing? Because class doesn't actually begin till the 4th.
Yeah.
And how to really work with that emerging new cycle as we
Totally
into our new cycle.
Yeah, I mean, I would encourage everyone to approach that day as a holy day, whatever that means to you. And, you know, really what I'm going to do is I'm going to get up at, you know, dawn and watch the sun rise, because she's right with the sun. Even though we can't see her, I feel like the transmission is especially coming through the light that day. Venus is our sister planet, and there's this, you know, this real like wise sister energy about her. So she's there even though we can't see her. And to know that, like what you were saying before, is like it's right there even though I can't see the love, you know, even though I can't see the friend. And then to touch in at noon and really allow my crown to receive that sunlight, you know, if it's a sunny day, but energetically just tuning in. And then the power hour, noon, and then at sunset to watch the sun set, and really to sit with, you know, a combination of both, you know, this is what I'm wrapping up, this is what I learned, intention and writing and the, you know, the cognitive, and then just letting it all go and dropping into the not knowing and just choosing not to know in those moments of sunrise, noon, sunset, and just see what comes. Just be available for whatever's arising without putting anything on it, which is quite a superpower. And I realized that we, of course, time ran away, but I can quickly kind of just talk about the story, because I want to talk about those disconnects and the chance to disconnect very briefly. I mean, I could do a whole half an hour Descent of Inanna story, as I'm sure you could, and I'd love to hear you tell it. But basically, you know, in this ancient Sumerian story, Inanna chooses to go to the underworld. And at that point, the feminine nature has been split into the underworld goddess, queen of the underworld, and the top queen of heaven. And that's really important, right? Is we see that the dominator cultures really, over time, the stories change and they become much more controlling of women and the feminine and much more dominating. But in that initial story, she really chose to go see her sister and chose to go down into the unconscious to find medicine there, to go on that journey. And then, you know, she goes down and she goes through all of these gates, and she takes off a piece of her regalia at each gate. And it's pretty interesting that in the morning sky when that's actually happening, those, you know, those can correlate with the meetups with the moon, which is pretty interesting. I work a lot with the moon Venus gates, and how that those are good moments if you're tracking with Venus and you're wanting some dates to know like how things are progressing. Those are great dates. And then she goes down into the underworld and she dies. Her dark sister kills her and she's hung on the hook. And the way that she gets revived is through her relationships, through her friend who goes and gets help, and this god who makes these magical beings that can revive her. And then ultimately these little magical beings come in to the queen of the underworld, who's birthing and grieving in a whole world of hurt, and they empathize with her, and that opens her heart. And then she, you know, gives them a gift and they take Anana, and then Anana goes up. And then on the other side of that rising in the evening star, you know, as more the mature queen, she meets the moon 7 or 8 times as she's coming up. So it's a pretty interesting like, sky story, like animating the ancient story, which is very cool. But the thing that the other disconnect that I think is really interesting for the sake of relationship is when she comes up and out of the underworld, you know, she's told when she leaves, you may not leave the underworld without putting someone in your place. And so when she gets on the topside world, everyone's grieving for her. Everyone's distraught because she's the queen that makes everything happen and they love her, except her consort Dumuzi, who's wearing his finest clothes and feasting on her throne. And so she ends up saying, you're going. And he goes down to the underworld. So there's something about that story that is also, it's about the separation of our feminine nature and also the disconnect between the feminine and the masculine and that betrayal that I feel like, you know, working the story and working the cycle, it really helps us to heal those disconnects, you know, within our own beings and within our culture, and just become more coherent and more unified in our own discovery process of who we are in our own inner universe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love that story. It's a powerful story. And as I look at stories and storytelling, you always, there's a certain amount of awe that's deserved of, that's one of the oldest stories ever created.
Mm-hmm.
And yet it still has found a way to continue to have life and relevance among us. We're still carrying it. And this idea of, you know, cycles and right, and empathy and relationship and connection. And it's a deep one. So I really appreciate that. And I appreciate it. You know, it's like when you listen to all this, you know, it can be a lot to take in. And I always say it's, you know, working story and mysteries, you know, it's one of those things, it's sort of like tracking a wild animal. If you know about tracking birds, you don't go, you can't be very overt. You can't go and stare it down and expect to be like a really, you know, engaged bird watcher. You learn how to watch birds, you kind of, you go down the path and you actually look away. And when you look away, because if you stare something, you know, especially if it's a wild animal, it like it feels you and then it moves and it runs away, right? But if you can be in its presence without staring it down, without forcing it to tell you what it is, it can actually be and live in a way where you can get to know it. And so I kind of think about all of this in that same way, where it's a lot of information. We're definitely in the mystery realms. We're trying to, you know, understand the cosmos and the stars and these old stories and whoa, and then our story. And if you try to get too linear with it, it'll just, you know, it'll break the box. But if you can take a step back and understand that it's in the wonderment, it's in the listening, it's in allowing the connections to begin to reveal when you're not trying to force down an answer, it's where the magic can really begin to emerge, and where what is, you know, particularly relevant and available to us can present in ways that we might have never been able to imagine if we thought that we had to do all the work ourselves. And so that's where I think this is just kind of an exceptional moment, is that we're really opening ourselves to collaborate, not just with each other, not just with story, but also with the forces at play on our earth and off our. So if you guys have questions, means please, you know, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how, like, our actual process and how we would work with story, you know. Any other questions before we kind of meander into this other direction? I really appreciate that. Thank you, Sarah, for bringing. She brought forward that, like, so there's a couple cycles happening, right? There's the mega 19-month cycle, and then we're in this 40-day cycle. So if that's not confusing, I don't know what is. But so we are like in a cycle within a cycle. It's just like life. It's amazing. Okay, so I don't see any questions, so I'm gonna just kind of meander into this piece and talk a little bit about why I love working with story, and particularly how I understand story as a tool for transformation. Yes, Devorah, we're in a 12-year cycle, so I'm just going to go back to that because this is kind of mind-blowing. So think back to 2012, whatever was happening for you in 2012. And this is what I love about story, right? Because, each week I come forward and I write some story letter that some of you guys have gotten, and all of that. And like literally a couple of weeks ago, this one story kept tapping at my shoulder and was like, tell me. And I was like, I'm not going to tell you. It was a love story. And it wasn't just any love story. It was like the most, like, it was one of the most painful love stories I've experienced in my adult life. And I don't usually talk about those kinds of things in my story letters. But I trust stories, because I've said yes to them. I've said yes to the muse. And so when a story comes banging down the door, I say, okay, sure. Show me what you got. Like, why do you want to be here? And the next thing I know, I'm in this big story, and I'm sharing this big story. And it's one of the most healing love stories I've ever experienced, because it had the most amount of growth and it had the most amount of transformation that I've ever experienced. And when I look back, that story happened in 2012. And yet it came back for me to be able to tell the resolution of it right now. And this was before I even knew that we were in Venus retrograde. So I'm like, I'm a believer, because I don't even have to know about Venus retrograde for, the pieces to be at play. So, in terms of working with story, and why using our words, not just writing, but speaking, to me is really potent and powerful. The Hawaiians say that words are so powerful that they can speed up the earth or slow it down. And the Sicilians say that words are so powerful that they poke holes in the universe. So it's like when you think about when you said something that you can't ever take back. And all the ancient religions agree that the world was sung, spoken, and chanted into existence. Not written, I'm just going to say. They say that it was sung, spoken, and chanted into existence. And to me, I love going back to that, because I feel like it's some of this ancient wisdom that comes from all the religions that gives us a little bit of keys into the mysteries of humans' unique role of what we're here on this earth. I don't like to say to do, to be, what unique offering do we have? And I feel like at this time in the world, there's a really big question of what is it that we have to give and not just take. And for me, one of the things I love about storytelling is that it brings us back to some of the most ancient practices of being good humans, which it puts us into that giving and receiving cycle. So in terms of what this class will do is you're going to go in and you're going to get to go into the muck of your love stories. And this is a tricky time, and I really want to honor, because here I am talking about relational love, and most of us are talking about it around romance, but holy cow, aren't we all engaged in a really big, massive relational love story right now that is exploding in Minneapolis? And that is happening right alongside. And so one of the things that I can understand, if I look at the world and I'm like, right, Venus retrograde, wow, she's really here to show us what isn't working, and sometimes it's those really explosive things that can give us the biggest access to our hearts if we choose it, and careful as I muck around that kind of language. So, in terms of working with story, what I understand is like there's this opportunity where you can go back in and you can go back to those stories that are the most unresolved, the ones that are haunting you, the ones that keep you up at night or don't allow you to love with an undefended heart. And I love this expression of what is it to love with an undefended heart? And it doesn't take courage to live with an undefended heart. I think it's just wisdom. It's knowing that no matter what, every time you're going to love, there's going to be some pain. It's just like, I've got these two amazing cats that are right beside me. I love these guys. They bring me so much joy. And most likely they're going to die before I do. and I have to live with that, right? That there's going to be death in the presence of their love. And how do I love them no matter what? It's easy when I say that about my cast, but then how do I say that about the new romance? Oh my God, no matter what, no matter how much I love you, you're going to let me down because I still really love you no matter what. There's going to be a betrayal because betrayal comes with love. It's like of all different kinds. So it's like one of the reasons why I love going into story and is that it makes space for the complexity of life. And we don't live in a time that allows for a lot of space for complexity, right? We've kind of lost, we don't really live in a world that makes space for it. It's a lot of black and white. So story gives us, a much bigger and broader way of expressing our lives and expressing ourselves in our lives. And the way that I understand story also is that they evolve. They're like trees. We don't expect a tree to stay a sapling. We expect a tree to put in some deep tap roots, to be fed and nourished and grow, 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 grow until it gives something back, some shade or some fruit or something, And our stories, I feel like, are the exact same way, where there's this time where we go in for this nourishment and we get fed through this reflective process of exploring them. And then, one of the processes that we do is we set this clear intention, and we do it with ritual. We do it with the stars. So at some point, we'll be able to actually be with Venus and be in this mindfulness of, how do I open to this energy that perhaps I've not been consciously in relationship to, and how can I receive things that maybe I don't even put words to, but is part of my intention for healing my connection to either a particular relationship. But I even think it's a little bit more fun to say, what is my relationship to love itself? Because love lives in our ways in so many different places, for the interrelational, the interpersonal, the self, the other, the earth, right? So it can be even a bigger love story. So as you, begin to wonder if this is for you, it's like, I love looking at it in that great big way. So as we go in and we go into this process of looking at these old unresolved stories, that's our content, that's our material, those are the seeds. But then they're going to grow, and they're going to grow into something that we can't even imagine right now. This is what I love. And one of the processes that we do is we enter into the mythic dimension. And the reason why I love entering into the mythic dimension, we can say another word by engaging our mythic imagination, is that puts us into one of the oldest languages that humans have ever had access to, that we are aware of, which is symbol, myth, our oldest stories, metaphor. What is metaphor but the language of spirit? Archetypal energies. So we can see ourselves as bigger than being in this moment. We can start to look at our stories and being in the soul story. Like, what's our soul story? Oh, what's the soul? What's this? Our soul lives through all these different lives and all these different experiences. What is our cosmos creation love story? And now we're in a much bigger story. And to me, this can be one of the most healing experiences that I could even imagine, and I'm going to give you a brief example, because this is definitely one of those things that you don't talk about, but one example, I was working with this woman. She had a situation that she was working with where, she had a lot of discord between her and her brother, and they could not connect as friends in their adult lives. And she went into this process, into the mythic imagination. And part of it is really getting to see, what is your archetypal energy living over in that dimension? Because Michael Meade speaks, if you know Michael Meade, he's one of the most phenomenal mythologists that we get to live with on the planet at the same time. And he says, behind this dimension is the mythic dimension. So let's say there's multiple realities happening at once. This is one reality. And then behind it, it's like same show, different outfit. So it's like you have an archetypal energy that might be playing out there. And so we go backstage, and say, oh, well, what outfit are you wearing there? What archetypal energy? What goddess are you embodying? What is that self that isn't contained by the human form? And so for her, what she saw was that her brother was Crow, and that he had all this medicine. And all of a sudden for her, it transformed her story to him in such a way, because he'd been dealing with all this drug addiction. And all of a sudden now she saw how his archetypal energy lived in the shadow and lived in the magic. And she had another way of understanding his human form. And what I love about this is that it's not like I did this, it's not like we went to a book and we looked it up. It was tapping into her unconscious and into that other kind of intelligence and all those other mystery ways that don't exactly have a lot of place and ways to live in our world, and yet they're there and they're available to us anyway. And the more that we can integrate them into our lives, the more they understand. It's like the more access to the whole truth of what we are has more ways to live here. So that's part of it. So we go into this state, we go to this process of, we look at, oh, where's that yucky story? Yucky, what a weird word. But, where's that story that we don't want to tell in that way again? I never have to want to tell that story in that same way ever again. So we start with that story, and then we'll go into, oh, how do we take it and throw it into that mythic dimension, take a step back, see how it wants to be presented, and then we rein it back in, and then we have a new way of relating to it, and then a new story comes out. And that word new story, I want to claim it and like crowd our reins on it at the same time, because Sasha was saying, hey, we're at the end of a cycle, right? We get to claim this ending, and she talked a lot about victory. And one of the ways that I understand, having these is like transforming our stories, and if any of you guys saw that story letter that I wrote about Ben, it's like, well, if you knew me back in 2012, you would not have wanted to know me, because I was in such a state. I was beside myself for such a long time. I was so victimized, and he did this to me, and that bad guy, and blah, 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 and men, blah, blah, and something really did happen for me. And part of it really came into my relationship with the earth, and all of a sudden I was able to have this flip where it was like, he wasn't the bad guy out to get me. Man, before our lives came to be, he made some really great soul agreement, to offer me that gift that I really wanted, that would give me access to more of my heart than I'd ever had before. And he gave me an opportunity to learn forgiveness. And it turns out he turned out to be one of my extraordinary master teachers. And when I see him and when I relate to him now, it's like, I'm fine. I don't want to kill him. It's great to see him. I have a smile on my face. And it's like, it doesn't hold that. I'm not like confined by the energy. So this is like storytelling at its best, right? Is it true? Is it not true? Who cares? Does it feel good to live in? Yes. Do I enjoy his presence on the planet now? Absolutely. He did what he did? Yes. Do I find a way to live more easily and peacefully in my life? And do I live in a much bigger story? And can I still love in a really big way in the world? I mean, those are the things that matter to me. And that's why I love working with story as a tool for healing. So that is like that. So, so that's the process. The other things that we have going on, in terms of this class, which makes it really unique and, part of the evolutionary storytelling process is that it comes with a ritual kit. This idea that, we got to get out of this story that humans are here on our own. It's like, it's this, I love that we're coming, Sasha was saying, we're about to enter into the Aquarius, time of Aquarius, that the time of me is over. We're entering into the time of we. And to me, part of that means also, it's like we get to be out of the story of, I'm in it alone, either as me as an individual or even as humans, and coming back into relationship. And, this world is a storied world. And you might even say that our dreams, our stories are the earth speaking out loud. I love that. That concept, by the way, comes from this lovely man, Sean Kane. If you want to read a great book, I haven't even read this yet, but I've gotten so many quotes from him, Wisdom of the Myth Tellers. But this idea that our stories are the earth speaking out loud. So if we can be, again, so humble as to understand that, to really understand what a story is this deep process of listening. And as we listen deeply, all of a sudden we have access to more wisdom than we did on our own. And so in that way, we now in all these storytelling classes, we integrate real ritual and practices that you can do on your own. With the idea that stories don't change by themselves, and our egos and our brains don't need to even be responsible for changing them. It's our intention, and then that surrender and that collaboration with Venus, that collaboration with the soil and the wind and the rocks and the beings of the unseen world. And now we're in for a bigger journey because we've got more allies and partners on the way. So this class does have this really fun beautiful ritual kit which was developed by Brittany Nelson, and she like hand picks every bay leaf where you can write your prayers on for each day, and she really puts so much time and consideration into these. So if you want to get, if you're like, yeah, I want to do this class, and yeah, I want the ritual kit, you know, you can do that. And if finances are tight and you can't afford the ritual kit, you know, by all means you can collaborate and gather the things on your own. But I will say this is something that is made with a lot of care and intention and prayer as we enter into this work together. Oh, and I'll pick up that thread in terms of, oh, Jessica saying, Wisdom of the Myth Tellers. Sean Kane is the name of this book. So the thing about endings, and I just want to name and claim, is that, you know, there's this obsession with a new story. And it's a very strange obsession. And I think a lot of well-intentioned people are like, we want a new story in terms of our climate, in terms of our earth. Give us the new story, the new story. And it's like, it's a little suspect. It's a little bit like saying to the elder, you know, you don't look so good and you're not so convenient to be around. And I really don't like the way that you look like I might look when I get to your age. So out with you. You know, it's a little bit like what we're saying when we're saying, I want a new story, you know, and it's like, you know, how about we say, and this is really accurate, hey, I'm really ready for the next chapter. You know, because when we claim our next chapter, we get to stand on the shoulders of where we've come from. We get to claim all the wisdom. Wow, we made so many mistakes. But let's not learn them again because we threw the whole story out. We've got to learn it from the beginning. You know, so it's like, let's keep the memory, which we know as humans we're having some challenges with. Let's keep the memories. Let's keep the wisdom. Let's learn from everything so that we can continue to evolve. And that's why I love working with stories also, because it feels like you've entered onto the path of being an elder. When you claim yourself as a sacred storyteller. So as we tell these stories, you know, it's not just for us and our own healing. It's like by the time you're done with this, you're going to have a story that's been created in such a way where your wisdom's been harvested. And you might be going like, I don't have any wisdom for this story. This guy's a jerk, or this woman's the biggest, you know, whatever, you know, it's like, it's okay. The less you know, right now, the better. But if you go in with the intention, I want to harvest my wisdom, I want to find the gems, I want to find the medicine of this experience. And then once you cultivate that and you place it into a story in such a way that now your story is a gift, you know, and I keep thinking about the Me Too movement, and I keep thinking of all the same stories that we heard over and over and over again. And if more people had been, felt like they lived in a world where they could tell their stories, I have to wonder that, you know, and tell them from a wisdom place where please learn from me. I don't want to live in the shame of this. Please learn my experience, my medicine. Then perhaps those same stories won't have to be repeated over and over again. So same thing, you've learned something in your love lives. You've cultivated something. And when you have those stories and you make them into a gift, it's like you're giving them to someone else so that they can sip from your cup of wisdom. And then you become part of this evolutionary experience. Okay. Questions, answers.
May I clarify a couple of questions that came up about the cycle?
Please.
Okay, so the interesting thing about the Venus cycle is that it starts in the same point, retrograde, every 8 years. It was fuzzing, but so every 8 years, Venus starts in the same point retrograde. So remember how I said she's closest to the Earth, and that's called the interior conjunction with the Sun, and then she's furthest away. So every 9 months, she's on one of those positions, closest to the Earth, furthest away. So this position of closest to the Earth, retrograde, when she's closest to the Earth, happens every 8 years, whereas every 4 years, she'll be in the same sign, but on the other side of the Sun, if that makes sense. I know, but it helps to see it and feel it, but some of you are asking. So that's the main, I don't look at the retrograde cycle as a cycle within itself. It's more part of this, you know, closing out of something new and beginning something else, but you can look at it however you wish, whatever works for you. And it generally is a 40-day, which is a very interesting number, right? There's a lot of stories that connect with 40 days, and there's a lot of holy practices that have to do with 40 days. So it's like this, this time of reflection and review that happens. And then there's another question. I'm not sure what the 12 years is. I mark the Venus cycle as a continuous 19-month story, that there's an archetype that emerges at the beginning of that story where she meets the Sun on the interior. And so for Venus and Gemini, it would be the archetype of like the changing woman in the Dene culture, or any rainbow goddess, you know, or the Dakinis in the Tibetan. You know, there's an airy, flirtatious, curious, wonderful wisdom to this kind of archetype. You know, or maybe Chenrezig, who's kind of gender fluid. You know, that's the archetype that we're coming into, that is more of that magical reverence and wonderment that you were actually speaking to, Leah. And we're leaving behind this deep mermaid, scorpionic, you know, archetype. So we're really in an archetype shift. I love that you brought that in. So I hope that helps with the questions about the cycles. I just wanted to clarify what I was seeing in there.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And Sasha's going to be with us throughout the whole month, which I am so delighted by. And at the beginning of each class, she's going to speak to, okay, what are the energies that are specifically working at that time? And then how can we be working with them? And so on the 3rd, as I understand it, we're going to be entering into, and like I said, I claim no knowledge on astrology, no specializing. Did I say 12 years? I meant 2012. But that it is that emergent of a new cycle. It's that coming out. And so it's an exciting time literally to start and say, okay, I'm ready for my new story. You know, it's like we're literally right on time in terms of working with her. And it's been happening. So Lori said, hey, how do we prepare for the June 4th class? I did put a link down there. And don't let me forget to tell you about the special thing that you get if you register by today, because I always forget to say that. But anyway, so one of the things that you can do to prepare for class is your very first assignment is to create a love story map. Okay, this is a map of your love story. So this is actually not using your words. So whether you do this class or not, this is just a great activity. And what I say is give yourself an hour, put on some great music, get some fun colored pens, and the bigger the piece of paper, the better. And you don't use words. So this is the assignment, because I know you're like, wait, it's a story class, we use words. No, this is actually allowing your unconscious to reveal to you something that you might not already know. Because when we tell the same story over and over again, we kind of get into a rut. We literally like create patterns. We actually create these patterns in our brains. We tell the story over and over again. So we're trying to like jump off the track, go on a different roller coaster ride perhaps, and by doing that, we can see what is in our unconscious. So one of the cool things that you could do is you could go back to that great, and this is actually, I think we're going to use this. Someone gave us that great, they gave us all the dates. There we go. Sarah gave us dates of the 19-month cycle. Actually, hold on. Sarah's going to give us these dates, but they're key dates. Sorry, I think they're right here, June 12th, 2012, Gemini. But anyway, they're these, you know, they're these key dates. And what you can do is I'm going to ask you to really go through your whole life and how you've related to love, and all the different places that you've related to love, and you draw them in symbol. Okay, so again, this is the most ancient language, and you allow however you want to be inspired to reveal itself. So if you want to color in green, color in green. If you feel like you need to put 4 dots around it, you do 4 dots. This is about opening up to your intuition as well, because you know there's so much information in the symbols, the colors, the patterns that you create. And so as you do that, I'll also invite you to, you know, as you start from the beginning of your life to now, we'll also give you these key dates just to acknowledge and look at, oh, are there key things that happen in this cycle, and how I relate to my intimacy relationships, but also to love itself. And so I'm going to invite you to bring those to our very first class, because in that is going to be the great reveal of where we're going to find some of the content for your first story. So, and I'll give that assignment again. So if you didn't catch the whole thing, don't worry. But the key thing is just no words in your love story map. People are asking, what is the weekly commitment for the class and the assignments? Okay, so that is the only assignment that I'll ever ask you to do outside of class. I've been teaching online for a long time. I've learned that it doesn't work so well. So now we do all of our assignments in class. But this one, it's good to do because you want some time and spaciousness to do it. And so we meet on Thursdays from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And we meet on Zoom. It will never be this much talking heads. In general, it is always really far more interactive. You get to work one-on-one together. You get to work in small groups. You'll get to share your story and have it be witnessed and reflected back, and you'll get to work on your story again. The very first class, I'm doing something I've never done before, and I'm actually really excited for it. But I'm going to tell a soul story. And this is a mystic divination process of storytelling. And it's going to give us a big story that we can all rest in, and you all get to see yourself in the story. And it kind of reveals where a metaphor and something that you're living the story. So it's a kind of process. And then you'll get right into the story. Goodness. Okay. So, are any more questions that people have in terms of your first assignment, what to expect out of the class? You know, basically you'll get to come in with one story, you're going to get to compost it, you're going to take it into the underworld, you're going to come out with something different, and you're going to play in a different role in your story. And that's what I'm going to say. And we go through plays a lot. What will the dates be for the map? When you register for the class, you're going to get a welcome email, and you're going to get this really beautiful thing that Sasha made. Sasha, that's not a nice description of it. There's a better description of it. Why don't you tell us what the map is?
Oh, for the next the Venus cycle? Yeah. I did make a map to help everyone like actually see it. And then I also have a list of dates for this last cycle that will help you to reflect on when was she morning star, when was she under, like all of those dates. So that will be a more recent reflection. And then I could also do, if you wanted me to, Leah, I could put together Venus star point, which is all the 8-year points going back to whenever, you know, we could make that list if you're going to have people include their whole lives.
Sure. Yes, that sounds amazing. That sounds amazing. Sasha also does readings, you guys. I got to get one, and it's really lovely to get to hear her talk about your specific Venus cycle. So if you want to continue to deepen your particular story, and you know, it's like yes, Venus was retrograding for everybody, but you know, it's also living in each of our charts in a different way. And so that can be another way that you can deepen in. Okay, final, I like to keep to our, keep a boundary around timing. I don't do it that often, but we can. And so we are here at the end of the class. I'm going to, if you have any questions, please go ahead. Oh, here's the thing that I was gonna offer you. So if you feel inspired and you're really you're like, yeah, I wanna go take this class, Lori's in it, I'm all excited. Then I also, if you register by the end of today, I'm going to add a love story bundle kit. This is kind of really fun, where this is actually how to write your love medicine story for yourself. We're actually not going to do this particular exercise in the class because we're going to be working this other way, but this is a guided meditation to say, hey, you know what, my heart's, it's like I learned this exercise when I was in that deepest place of yearning for a love that didn't feel possible to me at the time. And I knew I needed some love medicine. And the way that I understand story is that it's really healing. And sometimes it can, when you enter it in the form of a prayer, it can bring that beautiful medicine that you most need in that moment. And so this is a meditation that brings you into the process of how to write your own love medicine story, unique to you. And then it also comes with a soul story that you can actually listen to called How Luna Got Her Wings, which is this very liberated and extraordinary soul story that also has a worksheet. So anyone who registers today will get that bonus piece. So that is there. And I put the link in the email. I can put it again. Okay. Final last questions. It's really nice to see all your faces. It's just a pleasure. I just have to say that. And I'm so grateful to Sasha for bringing her unique wisdom and perspective and helping us really make sense of the stars and the cosmos and Venus and the moon and bringing so much thought and care to it. And I gotta love anyone who loves etymology.
So glad to be here. Thank you.
Okay. And I'll leave you with a quote, and then we could all sign off and say goodbye. And you know, it's good tradition to end with a quote, because it's like saying, it's about giving a bow to those who have come before us. You know, those storytellers, those lovers of language and word who have toiled as you and I might be soon enough together. This is by Stephen Jenkinson. Act as if you were a people of consequence, so that I can treat you as such, and that you matter. Gosh, that touches me, especially in these times. What must have happened to people who unconsciously agreed that the best presence in this world is to have no found, but you can feel it. It would be proper to proceed, that there is consequence to us being here. Again, that's Stephen Jenkinson. So with that, I wish you.
Repeat that?
Yes, I can.
You froze in the middle.
Oh, that's horrible. Well then, here we go again. You know what that is? That's my karma, because I always ask the teachers to repeat the quotes. So I'm like, here we go. Act as if you're a people of consequence, so that I can treat you as such, and you matter. What must have happened to people who unconsciously agree that the best presence in this world is to have no presence or no consequence in this world? I'm going to read that again, because I misread it. What must have happened to people who unconsciously agreed that the best presence in this world is to have no consequence in this world? It's a velvet gauntlet, this idea of being of consequence. It doesn't clink when it hits the ground, but you can feel it. It would be proper to proceed, that there is consequence to us being here. And yes, I will put that in the email that goes out to you. And so may you always know that your stories are of consequence, and may you live them as the gift. And I look forward to seeing and weaving with you again in some fair day, and may the stars be kind to you. And I will unmute us, everybody, and we can all do a good big hurrah. So, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Have a great rest of the day.
Bye.
Thank you. Okay. Have a lovely day. Bye.